Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is having a good weekend. I've got a couple of news items here to cover and give my opinion on something here. First, I want to say I'm not hating on Serena Williams. I think it's great that a woman can get to the top of a sport, and, everyone should be entitled to do what they want. Everyone, including members of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, for those of you that don't know it, a couple of years ago, Serena Williams, the tennis pro, was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and several in her family are Jehovah's Witnesses. And it was even on TikTok, then X, Twitter, that she was baptized. And there was even video of her actually getting dunked under the water. So, like I said, I'm not hating on her, and she can do what she wants. I don't care. But I also want to give my opinion that as a Jehovah Witness, would the rank and file average Jehovah Witness be allowed to participate in a pagan festivity? Now think about this. Can kids celebrate their birthdays? No, because it's a pagan festival, a festivity. Can't celebrate your birthdays. Well, what about a average rank and file participating in the Olympics or the opening ceremonies? Serena Williams was carrying the torch in Paris. And I'm going to play a video clip here from her own TikTok account.
This is so cool. All right, everyone, we did it!
This is unique.
This is something I'll never forget.
And never do again.
Oh, okay. Hey, we're completely soaked. Super excited. I decided not to wear the white dress, but it's fun. I'll never forget this.
And, it is a great honor, and, that's great. But as a Jehovah Witness, did she do her background research of can she do it or can't she? Now, I want to play a clip here. This is from a public information Jehovah Witness in India, and this was after the explosion that was at the convention last year, I believe. Now listen carefully to what he says when asked about blood transfusions and birthdays.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is that I know the Jehovah's Witnesses really advocate returning to the biblical text as source material, and that you try to live your life as closely to the Bible as possible. This includes practices that are rather unconventional, like not accepting blood transfusions or not celebrating birthdays. This is something that has kind of created a stereotype around Jehovah's Witnesses. Just wanted a bit more clarity on these kinds of practices and how does one go about living like a Jehovah's Witness in a modern society?
Well, yes, I mean, everything is personal decision. While we have our publications which explains the Bible principles, But each individual has to decide whether he wants to follow that or not. So it's personal responsibility. Each one carries his own load, just the Bible says. So yeah, that is what we believe and what we practice. But life is precious. So the principle is life is precious, and that is why we do things. So we have a high regard for life, whether riding a scooter, riding a car, or even in case of blood transfusion. Jehovah's Witnesses give high regard to life, but it's a personal decision. And we are also happy that the medical community has come up with very much, transfusion alternatives. And each Jehovah's Witness decides, according to his Bible-trained conscience, which kind of medical care he will go for or not.
Just to add some context, the Jehovah's Witnesses won a landmark Supreme Court case in 1986 when 3 students in Kerala actually were expelled from their school because they stood up during the national anthem but chose not to sing it. And the Supreme Court held that their choice to not sing it is an expression of their religious freedom. Do you think that these were the kinds of quote-unquote anti-national activities that the accused Dominic Martin might have been going after, or how do you respond to that?
Yeah, just like I said, it's a personal responsibility of whatever one does with his or her life. As far as the national anthem is concerned, we respect the national anthem, we respect the flag, and in fact, we show our respect to the country by being, honest citizens of the country.
So it's up to an individual Jehovah's Witness. Now, I'm going to put the link down below. I highly recommend you go and watch this whole 14-minute interview and get a legal pad and make a little mark every time he says something that those of us that were in the Jehovah's Witnesses for decades realize, oh, are they softening it? Is he lying? You decide. But he mentions falsehoods, because the person that carried out the attack, he had issues with Watchtower's teachings and their policies and rules. And so, the PID guy says, oh, falsehoods. Each Jehovah's Witness can make up their mind. But what happens if the elders catch you having a huge birthday party? Think about that. What if the entire world knew the governing body were having a big birthday party and celebrating their birthdays? Think about that. Now, I want to thank Larchwood very much for posting this on X, aka Twitter. It is from the 1977 Awake, and I happen to have the Bond volume hard copy here. Yeah, the actual yellowed hard copy. February 8th, page 5, the Olympics, where are they headed? And I want to go over to page 6, the subheading, History of the Games. And I'm going to read this. It is of interest to review briefly the history of the Olympics to see how they developed to their present form. What eventually happened to the ancient games may find a parallel in the modern event. The first recorded Olympic Games were held in the year 776 BCE on the plains of Olympia in western Greece. That was about the same time that the ancient Hebrew prophet Isaiah began to prophesy to the nation of Judah. But while Isaiah talked about the living God, the ancient Greeks dedicated their Olympics to the false god Zeus. So would that classify this as the Olympics as a pagan festival? Pagan games? You decide. Since the games honored Zeus, there were sacrifices to him and other mythical gods. There was also the worship of the Olympic fire. Today we call it the Olympic torch. It goes on to describe what games they had at that time. Now, so I did a little digging. Insight Book, Volume 1, page 887, under the title Games. When you go over to the second column, under the subheading Greece. At about the time that Isaiah began to prophesy in Judah, the Greeks began their famous Olympic athletic contest in honor of Zeus. In the year 776 BCE, while the games at Olympia remained the most famous, 3 other Greek towns became important centers of the contest. And then they talk about what other, cities had Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were celebrated every 4 years and were of profound religious significance. Religious sacrifice and the worship of the Olympic fire were prominent features of the festival. Now, Larchwood also posted a little bit of history about the Olympic Games. And you can go to any encyclopedia, website, and they will tell you, basically the same thing. The idea for the Olympic flame was derived from ancient Greek ceremonies, okay? Olympic flame, where sacred fire was kept burning throughout the celebration of the ancient Olympics on the altar of the sanctuary of Hestia. In ancient Greek mythology, the fire had divine connotations, and it was thought to have been stolen from the gods by Prometheus. Sacred fires were present at many ancient Greek sanctuaries, including those at Olympia. Every 4 years, when Zeus was honored at the Olympic Games, additional fires were lit at his temple and that of his wife Hera. The modern Olympic flame is ignited every 2 years in front of the ruins of the temple of Hera. So, would carrying the Olympic torch be part of this celebration? So are they softening their pagan festivals? Are they going to allow birthdays now? Watchtower. If you allow Serena Williams, as a baptized Jehovah's Witness, to carry the Olympic torch and be part of that celebration, the ancient celebration of Zeus, the pagan god, your words, not mine, then can Jehovah's Witnesses start celebrating birthdays now? I don't know. My personal humble opinion, I don't see a difference. I don't see a difference between the Olympics and that pagan celebration and birthdays. Especially since birthdays really aren't a pagan celebration. People have celebrated their birthdays since time beginning. Well, look at what just happened with the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games with Serena Williams. Is that a softening? But look at the huge PR and great PR it is for Watchtower. Oh, here's a Jehovah's Witness, a prominent Jehovah's Witness, carrying the torch, part of the Olympic Games, honoring Zeus with that festival, that worship of the Olympic flame. You just got to ask. And for those of us that were Jehovah's Witness for decades, this raises a big question mark. Like I said, I don't care. I'm just here to expose the hypocrisy, the lies. And speaking of that, I want to thank everybody who has been sending me screenshots from the New Zealand commission report that just came out. And I want to thank Shane so much for posting these on the JWs for Justice. So I will put a link down below to his Facebook page. Now, when you get this report on page 56, Independent Inquiry into CSA, England and Wales, they even mention ICSA in the Australian Royal Commission, and I thought this was interesting. Point 200. The Independent Inquiry into CSA in England and Wales published an investigation report on child protection in religious organizations and settings, including the Jehovah's Witnesses. The ICSA had different terms of reference from the current New Zealand inquiry and was limited to the abuse of children. Despite this, it is helpful to consider their findings, giving their review of the failures of the Jehovah's Witnesses to identify abuse, the gaps in the child protection procedures of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and their recommendations, which are all relevant to the inquiry. So they had the ICSA report and the Australian Royal Commission report. So they recognized, the information from those inquiries. Now you can see why Watchtower did not want this report out in the public. They have to do some serious damage control now. Point 202. The ICSA found that the Jehovah's Witness organization had the third highest number of abuse victims after the Catholic and Anglican churches. See, and that's why we kept saying, per capita, they're worse than the Catholic Church. And according to this, even the Anglican churches. It further found the two-witness rule is not intended to be a safeguarding measure. It is part of an internal religious process for determining whether someone should remain a congregant. Yeah, it's just part of their judicial process. Has nothing to do with safeguarding children. Nevertheless, the application of the rule in the context of CSA is likely to increase the suffering of victims and fails to reflect the reality that by its very nature, CSA is most often perpetrator in the absence of witnesses. At least they recognize this, which is good. The Jehovah's Witnesses do not carry out vetting and barring checks on elders, ministerial servants, or those who run the organization regionally or at a national level. See, there's no background checks, no vetting of these perpetrators. This is because they maintain that they do not separate children from their parents during religious worship or practice, or when the children are in the company of someone in a position of trust, and so checks are not permitted by law. This fails to recognize that the mere presence of parents does not prevent those in position of trust from developing inappropriate relationships with children or being able to groom both their children and their families. And look at how many times this has happened. Elders become a friend of the family, and he's like an uncle to the kids, and they go over and they're friends with the elders' kids, or they do sleepovers, or they go out in service, field service, or on Bible studies. That does not prevent the abuse of kids. I know when we were in Cottonwood, Arizona, the presiding overseers, they're called Kobe's now, but he would have a pocket full of candy. So every time he, would go to the meetings, kids would come running to him and he would give them candy. Of course, then he's wanting to work with them out in service and, giving them hugs and, the grandfatherly type. I don't know if he was a, pervo or not, but you can see how easy it is to groom children. Oh, he's like a grandfather to them. Happens all the time. All the time. Going on. The Jehovah's Witness Child Protection Policy, consisting of 4 core documents, are rooted in religious texts and written in scriptural language. 2 of these documents fail to provide practical guidance, including on how to contact statutory authorities. Well, of course not. Of course not. I have that child protection booklet. It doesn't tell them to contact the authorities. Oh. Going on to page 57, chapter 6, summary of findings. So this is the last page of the document, and it's their findings, and I'm going to read this. Point 203. The inquiry finds that during the inquiry period, elders in the Jehovah's Witnesses held positions of power and had status and authority conferred on them by the faith. Yeah, it's the circuit overseers who are appointed by, Watchtower higher-ups that appoint the elders. The faith assumed responsibility for the care of children and young people placed in the care of elders for witnessing activities, like I was just talking about. Yeah. Elders are put in the assumed responsibility of the care of kids. That is big. So no more of these court cases saying, oh, well, it's up to the parents. We don't have any organizations, for the care of children. Just the fact that the elders are given the care for the responsibility of these witnessing activities. And investigations in judicial committee processes. Is this why they just had to change the term, no longer judicial committees, they're committees of elders? The faith's assumption of responsibility for those children and young people flowed from its conferral of authority and trusted status on elders and the action of elders in taking children and young people into their care unsupervised in these contexts. Like I mentioned, out on field service, Bible studies, for sleepovers. In those situations, children and young people were in the care of the faith. Exactly. There is credible evidence that sexual abuse occurred in the care of the Jehovah's Witness faith. I wish Watchtower would admit this. See, the commission recognized it. The practice of elders questioning children or young people who were victims of CSA during investigations and judicial committee processes was inappropriate and emotionally or psychologically abusive. Look at the case in Utah that was going on several years ago, where a young girl, where the pervo actually recorded the attack on the young woman. And that was part of his confession to the elders. And the elders took her in a judicial committee and made her listen to it over and over again and question her and grill her without her parents or, supervised someone on her side. And we know they changed that rule also. Now a minor has to be with one of the parents or guardians to be in a judicial hearing, or no judicial hearings at all. Do you see how all of this is making Watchtower change their policies? This is good for them, but it's too little, too late, and it's not far enough. Hey, Watchtower, how about an apology to all of the victims? There were factors that increased the risk of abuse in the care of Jehovah's Witnesses, including the status of leaders and the power imbalance between them and members of the faith. See? Imbalance of power. These kids were in there without any representation, parent, or anything. They were alone, a small child against 3 elders grilling them, interrogating them. That's an imbalance of power. And like I said, psychological abuse and emotional abuse. The barriers to the disclosure of abuse, including the place of females in the faith, the fear of exclusion, and relative disconnection from the secular world. You're going to be disfellowshipped. Lack of vetting and training of elders in child protection and abuse prevention. The full extent of abuse in the care of the faith cannot be quantified for reasons including inadequate record keeping and the barriers to disclosure described above. See, Watchtower was trying to prevent this at every step of the way. So it cannot be quantified. They really don't know how bad or how serious of a problem it is. Well, all of us do, don't we? Yeah, it's a tremendous, horrific systemic problem. Steps taken by the faith to prevent and respond to abuse in care were inadequate. In particular, There was inadequate vetting and training of elders in child protection and abuse prevention. The policies, rules, and standards relevant to CSA were from various separate directives from the governing body across many different issues of different publications, all based primarily on passages from Scripture. Processes for raising, handling, and responding to concerns or complaints of abuse and care were inadequate. Hear that, Watchtower, Jehovah's Witnesses? You're inadequate in caring for the children and preventing the abuse. Inadequate. So thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.